Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for the third episode of Tab U. My name is Katrina Hindley, I'm Head of Marketing, and I'm joined with Nick Russell and Antony Stark. And Antony, our special guest today, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Antony Stark from Linea Homes. We are a small to medium-sized property developer based in northwest London, specialising in buying sites which we can add value to through planning.
Great.
Which we sometimes build out.
Great.
Oh, and I'm back again. I'm Nick Russell, as she said, Sales Director of Tab.
Cool. Same format as last time. We'll be asking the top 5 questions that have been asked by you this week and on property development. So if we just crack on with question number 1, which is what does a property developer do, in your words?
In my words. Okay, well, a property developer actively goes to the market to seek sites which they can develop and hopefully make a profit at the end.
And when you say develop, so you're looking for property, you choose your property, you buy the property?
For us, mainly, we're looking for sites that are underutilised, potentially old commercial buildings that are sitting in locations which would suit redevelopment for residential or a mixed-use scheme.
Typically, you're looking for without planning. You're looking to add value twice, so through the planning stage and then through the development stage.
We won't buy any sites with planning unless we feel there's an opportunity to increase the consent by getting more units and getting more density. But ultimately, we're only interested in buying sites without planning. And as Nick says, we want to add the value twice, so it gives us an opportunity to make a decision as to whether or not we want to. Once we've got the planning, we've added value and we could sell, hopefully for a profit. And if we so desire, we can then go ahead and build it out and hopefully make another level.
And, and when you come to developing a property, what kind of other parties are involved? Do you have a team of designers who do the work behind it? Or do you come up with a vision and articulate it?
I think in terms of the design of the building that you can put on a site, especially in the areas that we're working, which normally to be quite tight urban sites, we're dictated to really by the planning system and what they're sort of looking for, because most of what we're looking at is surrounded by other buildings, and that normally dictates the style and the size of what we can create. In terms of who we go to, we will go to all our professionals, externals. They're all externally based, so that'd be architect, planning consultant. We might use an interior designer once we've got to the next stage where we're actually looking to market.
Actually, can I just roll on from that? So would you typically outsource all the skills that you need outside of your ability to source, manage, finance the deals?
Yeah.
And from that, what do you think the benefits are for someone who's looking to get into development of maybe not having the additional cost permanently of having everyone in-house as to externally, what are the strengths and weaknesses of both?
I think you can keep it very tight as a developer if you're not building in-house. The moment you decide to build in-house, you've got to have a lot of projects to make it work, and then you have to start employing quite a few people to get your costs down. A lot of people subcontract, but every time you subcontract or every time you employ a contractor, you're ultimately going to be giving some of your profit away. So I think being a builder or a developer, it's the reason why we only buy sites without planning is because we can't find sites with planning that we can then go and employ a main contractor or even package it up and do subcontracts and make a profit, because we're giving a profit away to those guys.
You're being squeezed out of those deals.
Yeah,
and most developers aren't they?
Yeah, I don't really understand how that works, to be honest. We've tried it and it's not been particularly successful.
Do you think,
we
though,
have to find the land.
Sorry to jump in. Do you think, though, that's where some developers are coming a little bit unstuck because they have so much in-house, they have to build, therefore they're taking on sites that maybe the margins are very thin, but they have to take on that potential risk of a thin margin because they've got to keep the flow of work for their employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pressures when you've got a machine to then go and buy sites. They're difficult to buy sites with planning it's very easy to overpay. Unless you're if you're building big schemes, you tend to be you tend to be able to find more of a margin because there's less people looking to buy those sites. But as a small to medium sized house builder, where you're maybe doing 9 to 50 units, there's a lot of developers that are looking to do that. It's easier to get funding when you've got a site with planning. So that ultimately, the more people that are looking to buy it, the higher the price is going to go, and the leaner the margin someone will go at. Equally, if you're not particularly experienced, you might find a site with planning. You might go to a contractor who turns around and says, I can build it for that. And by the time you've given him a set of by the time you bought the site, given him a set of working drawings, giving him the M&E design and everything else, that price has changed.
Yeah. And
now all of a sudden you're looking down the barrel of a loss. And that happens quite a lot. I wouldn't say that as a funder you see it, because they tend to hide it by chucking a load more money at it. But it's definitely real. We see it. We've got sites that we've sold at 45%, 50% of GDV, and we put it through our appraisal as if we're going to build it, having sold it at the price that we're selling it at. It doesn't work. We just don't understand those numbers.
Listen, people are prepared to pay you for it.
They're prepared to pay it because some people are naive. Some people are doing different things with money, and they're feeding a machine. And if sometimes there's a reason why they're buying that site, it suits where they want to be. They like the location. They think the market's going to grow. Whatever the reasons are, there's a lot of people out there looking to buy those sites, and there's not a lot of planning consents coming through, and it ultimately pushes the price up.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do you think as well that there's still a lot of people who still look at the positive side of development? So they're going, actually, if I can get this GDV and I can build it at that, but actually they haven't gone through maybe some of the cycles that, you've been doing this a little bit of time now. So you've seen what's happened, seen cycles, and they're maybe not underpinning the original appraisal with, they're not factoring in maybe a little less on a price at the end price and a little bit more on the build costs. So they're looking at the best case scenario rather than actually, no, let's factor in the worst. Does this still work if these these 10% variances either way? Yeah,
I think that there's people that are looking at sites with rose tinted glasses on, and they're saying, okay, I can build it for that. My contractor says I can build it for that. But is he actually thinking, okay, how many sites have you built where you haven't had variations coming from every different angle, and all of a sudden your contingency, which was 5%, 10%, is now 15, 20%. Your GDV isn't going up. So on that basis, are you buying the right site? We always buy based on today's values of the end product, and we always look at what we tend to buy unconditional. So therefore, we're looking at what bricks and mortar we've got on day one, and does it stack up? And if we don't get planning, if we can't do what we want to do, what's our worst case scenario?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I was just, for our viewers, could I get a different definition of GDV?
A different definition.
A definition.
Oh, a definition.
Sorry.
Gross development value. So it's if you've created a house or a flat, how much is it worth when it's finished?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
Great. So, question number 2 is, how do I become a property developer? Where do you think I should start, and what do I need, and what skills do I need to become a property developer?
You need quite a bit of experience in the industry as a whole, and if you're talking about from a residential point of view, I would say there's no harm in going to train to be a surveyor. There's no harm in starting off being an estate agent, and then maybe from being an estate agent going into commercial, or then maybe going to auctions, and then potentially becoming a land agent, and trying to get an understanding of building an appraisal from, okay, well, I've got this building or site that I want to buy. How am I going to get from there to I want to buy this, or I want to get an option on this site, to it's going to be worth that if I can get that planning and then sell it on. And
that whole process is what you call an appraisal? Is that kind of, what would you call, I've heard you guys mention it a little bit, what would you call an appraisal? Or so you start off with, okay, how much have I got to buy the site for? And then you would add in your build costs, you would add in your planning costs, you would add in your professional fees, your agent's fees to sell it, and then you'd establish what you can sell it for at the end. And hopefully you're going to end up with a profit, which looks like, without planning,
potentially 30-40% return on cost, and maybe with planning you want to make 15-20%.
Great. So do you think I could become a property developer?
If you go through the process of trying to understand all the different elements of what you're putting into your appraisal, then yes.
If you want to go grey.
Yeah.
If you want to go grey or bald.
Yeah.
Well, I hopefully not yet.
So you'd say, sorry, it's a big peaks and troughs business, right? Especially when you're in the build stage, you're very much either, all in terms of a lot of your cash is in. Yes, there are some fees to be earned along the way to keep the business ticking over, but you're either all in with everything that's going on with the build, and then on the way out, please God, you make a profit, then you're all out. Then what do you do with that money? You've got to recycle it into a whole new scheme. So there's a lot of big ups and downs in development, and the time frames between those ups and downs are also quite long. Not like what we do as a lending business, where it's very, very quick. We're lending short term money very quickly. The development side of things is a much longer process.
And how did you get into property development, and how has that become Linea Homes today?
Yeah. So I started off, I was in the clothing business, and I did that straight out of school, I suppose, when I was 17. And then from there, I got into agency when I was about 19, and I ran quite a well-known agency in Hindley for a bit. And then I went out and worked on my own, set up my own agency. And then probably about 5 years after that, it was sort of buy-to-let was starting to kick off, and I was in quite a good position to pick up a few flats here and there, and I built up a nice portfolio of buy-to-let property. And within that, it was all we would never buy. I had a business partner at the time. We would never buy a one-bedroom flat and rent it out. We would always buy an unmodernised one-bedroom flat that was big enough to turn it into a two-bedroom flat. So the theme's always been, buy something, add value. So you're buying on today's value, but you also got an opportunity to add some more value through refurbishment and perhaps turning it into a two-bed.
The ability to recycle your equity quicker.
Yeah. So it meant that if we paid X for it, we could refinance for Y once we'd settled the asset by turning it into a two-bed and renting it out. And then we would cross portfolio, and we used those funds to buy the next one and the next one and the next one. And then from that, I bought a couple of houses and turned them into flats. And then I think Northern Rock happened, and I sort of took stock, and I looked at my agency, and I kept running that for a bit longer. And then my partner Gavin left where he was working at Paramount at the time, and he'd done lots of investments. And he sort of mentioned, and I'd known Gavin for years, and we'd done a couple of deals, but nothing major. And then he sort of just mentioned a pub to me, and I just happened to be round the corner from this pub. It's about 10 years ago in Camden. He said, "I'll go see it." So I went to see it. He said, "Yeah, it's good. I'd buy it." He said, "How long?" And I said, "I can, probably a month." He said, "You got to buy it tomorrow." So I bought it tomorrow,
right?
And the rest has sort of been history from there. And we've sort of just gone on and bought I suppose we've probably done 50, 60, 70 transactions in that time.
Amazing what you can do when your back's against the wall.
Well, this is it. And I think actually when your back is against the wall, you tend to do your best business.
Well, I think we do too.
Yeah.
Cool. And question number 3 is, what do you look at when deciding if a development is suitable or not?
So location, we really don't look at anything where values are under £500 a foot. We don't really understand that model. Having said that, we've had sites out of London. I think we had something in Sheffield, and the guy was building at £70 a foot and selling at £170 a foot and could make it work. So it does work. It's just not a model we understand. But when we buy, I think the biggest factor for us is if something's advertised, we're not really going to look at it. If someone phones me up and said, "Look, you should look at this," then we're interested. Deliverability is everything for us. We spend a lot of time very, very fast on the front end. So if I see something on the Monday, I think we bought a pub in South Wimbledon before Christmas. We bought it in 3 days, exchange to completion, all the due diligence, everything we wanted to do, and that cost money. But I wouldn't do that unless I know it could be delivered.
But that goes you trusting your professional team, right? So that goes back to you having a good lawyer who can go through things quickly. You've got your feel for these things these days, right? You've had enough experience.
Yeah. But that was our angle on that, because lots of people made a similar offer to us, and there was an issue with a possessory title, and we've dealt with that before. We know what we're looking at, and we'll take a view. And we could see what the owner wanted, which she wanted to complete before Christmas. No one else was going to do it, and we said, fine, we'll do it. So speed is our MO, and understanding what we're buying, as well as going to professionals. I think you get, as you say, you get a feel for everything. You can stand back and say, okay, well, I've been here before. I know what I'm looking at here. I know what potentially the issues are going to be. The price seems to be cheap enough to make that decision where I'm happy to just get on with it.
So I've actually got just a quick question on you. Look, you want things that are off market, right? You want things that people haven't seen, which is always the golden goose, right, of the industry. How would someone who's maybe fairly new go about finding deals and agents trusting in them that they can deliver on something without that level of experience that you've now gained? Because otherwise, all they're going to be doing is seeing the same deals that everyone's seeing, that the likes of Savills and other agents. I'm not just plugging Savills, but they're the first one that came to mind. We know that that's going through a whole process, and there's lots of people looking at it, and price might be getting pushed up, and you don't want to get caught in that. I'm in a bidding war with with a load of people with deeper pockets who might just take me to the wire and then drop it, and I'm left holding the baby. How can they get into that position of, is that just time and working the market and spending the time going out and seeing properties, seeing agents? And
I think if I was now going at it again and hadn't had the experience that I've got, and I wanted to get an into that, I think it's virtually impossible to say, hi, I'm Joe Bloggs, and come off the street and go, I'm going to buy that. They just won't have confidence that you can do it. I think the biggest thing is, once you've done one, that agent is going to phone you again. It never ceases to amaze me that we'll do a deal, we'll develop we'll buy a pub in Greenwich, and then all of a sudden, every time someone gets a pub in Greenwich, they're on the phone. Don't look at the fact that we also happen to buy a building in Redhill, which was a warehouse. That's what they remember you for. But the more you do, the more people will pick up the phone to you, and they can see that you perform and that you don't mess about. Because we never take a contract and work it. If we take a contract and we've agreed a price, we're paying it, and we're ready to do it quicker than the vendor wants to sell it. I just don't believe in that. Just rather, if an agent trusts us enough to get a contract, we're not going to mess around with the price unless there's something fundamentally wrong that's going to cost us money between us agreeing it and exchanging. I think if I was actually looking to get into the business, you'd go and work for somebody that could give you some credibility. And then once you've
Would you recommend a major house builder, or would you recommend maybe a sort of smaller, medium developer? It doesn't really matter. Just get your experience.
What do you want? It depends what you want to do. If you want to be a developer yourself, I'd say there's nothing wrong with either. But ultimately, going to work for a major house builder, are you going to actually then be able to work for yourself and do it? Possibly.
Small cog in the wheel.
If you've been buying 3 sites for 152, 400 units, and that's what you want to do, and you've proven that you can buy it, then I'd say be confident and go and try and find a backer that's going to put that money on the table. Ultimately, if you can find a deal that works, the money will come to it. Never had a problem with that.
Okay. In fact, you talk about a backer. Sorry, I know I'm sort of jumping in the questions here. This is probably the big question that every developer who hasn't got money. How do I get my first backer on my first deal? What would you? Okay, let's say you've made some money now, right? That you've done a few deals. All of a sudden, your money's out or in your pocket. Youngish, doesn't have to be youngish, but someone wants to say, you know what? I think I can do this. I found a deal. Here's my appraisal. Antony, will you back me? And do you want to see them have money in the deal, or is it the person you're backing plus the deal, or is it a combination of all things?
I think with us, we will back anyone who comes to us with a deal. We won't hand over the reins. We'll work with them and show them what we're doing, because unless they're someone that's got a huge amount of experience, that's a different story. But we believe that we can add a lot of value in terms of the experience we've had of dealing with lots of different situations. But we would definitely back anyone that came to us. And
would you bring your infrastructure as well as part of that?
Yeah, of course. We will. Listen, if we get involved in the deal, the day we complete, and the day I agree it, I think because you've seen how I work. We're all over it. So we've already instructing, the deal that we're doing at the moment. We've already got architects, planning consultants. We're ready. We're going to be ready to submit by the time we complete. Topo's already done. We're spending money.
Do you want to explain what a topo is?
Sorry.
I can see it was on the tip of Katrina's tongue. Like, topo.
I think
everyone needs to know what that is.
It's a topographical survey, so it's a site survey of the entire site, land, how the land falls, the heights that are surrounding it, the existing building.
Does that include, it's just like wind?
Sorry, where are we going with this?
This is just, I was picturing London Bridge between the Shard and the entrance, and it's really windy.
Okay, fine. And does it create a wind tunnel? Does it? We got rights of lights and all things like that.
Yeah, it's probably a different thing that probably does come into a taller building situation, which we haven't really. It's not really our bag, but a straightforward topo is when you've got a lie of the land, you've got the size of the site, you can hand that document to the architect. You should always overlay it with the title plan to ensure that you're not building outside your boundaries, and then he can design you a scheme which is accurate and fits on your site.
And where would you get a topo from?
There's lots of survey companies you'd go out there to do it. I could drop a few names if you want me to. But I have to go to them first.
No,
exactly. Give me a fee.
or a free
he's
such a developer,
topo.
isn't he? Jesus.
Exactly.
Okay, and then we've talked about professional fees. And one thing I've spoken to maybe smaller, younger developers about is probably the need for, it's a horrible word, throwaway cash. There's loads of deals that you need to look at. You're appraising, you're bringing in architects. You may never do the deal.
Yeah.
So starting from nothing is almost impossible. And I see, is there an element where you say, look, you're going to need some cash that you may never see back? You factor that into future deals that you make profit from, but... Generally, is there a lot of money up front that you sort of think you need to make sure you're looking at deals properly and getting the right? That then may not happen.
I think the deliverability thing is the big thing, and the way you're procuring what you're buying is ultimately bigger because the ingredients need to be there. If you're buying something that's on market that is going for top dollar, I'm not going to spend money on it. If I'm getting a phone call from an agent, or we've gone direct to a landowner, and we're gonna put funds forward because we know we can deliver it, and we're looking at it, and the experience says that it's worth spending money on it. You can. Ultimately, yes, you're going to have some money that you're going to be prepared to burn. Someone starting out, my advice is if it's your first deal and you're worried, and you're sitting there and I've just got about enough money, I'd go to somebody who can back you. Give away some profit, de-risk it for yourself, and ultimately, if you trust that person, they're going to put a fresh set of eyes on it. We want a fresh set of eyes on all the sites we do. If we think we're going to buy it, we'll probably go out to 2 or 3 different planning consultants, architects, maybe transport consultants, right-of-light consultants, as well as ourselves. Get as many eyes on it as you can, because someone might see something that you're not going to see. We don't know everything. We learn something new every day. And I just think if I was starting out, and I know what I know now, I would definitely be picking up the phone to somebody else that's done it. Trust is a big thing. That is the thing, and a lot of people can't get over that. And I've been burnt the same way as lots of people have been burnt as an agent or a developer, where you got not for fees, or you've gone to somebody with a deal and they've tried to tuck you up. Myself and Gavin have both been agents. We know what that's like. If you can't afford to pay a fee, then don't buy the site. And if somebody comes to you with a deal, I don't understand why you'd then tuck them up, because hopefully they're going to come to you with another deal. So that's how with a lot of the deals that we do find is because of those situations. We've had situations with various properties where we've been offered it. We don't think the person that's offered us can deliver it because we happen to know the person selling better, but they mentioned it to us, so we wouldn't know about it. So we've bought it and then gone back to them and said, we bought it, we owe you a fee. And then we've gone and sold it and then paid them another fee. And we've done that because...
You 2 months later, bringing business.
He's bringing us business.
Exactly.
And that's
and look, how you conduct yourself in any walk of life is always, people always remember your last encounter with them. So agents, particularly, they want to make sure that.
No, but I was an agent, and I was, I got turned over by numerous people, because they're just short-sighted.
Good old property industry.
Yeah, but that is the property industry.
Cool. Thank you. Question number 4. What's the difference between a builder and a developer?
We sort of touched on that, but I can give you a bit more.
So black and white.
So a builder has the infrastructure to build, and ultimately is built to do that. So I've got a few people that I know, and they will build, he's a small builder, and he'll build maybe 2 or 3 sites all within a very close proximity to each other. He employs a certain amount of key staff, and he lives and breathes those deals. And he has got every nut and bolt done, and he's analysing every single penny that's spent. And he can afford, therefore, to potentially pay more for sites than a developer can, because, as I said before, a developer's got to go to someone like him as a main contractor, and he's got to give him a profit which might be 10-20%, and that's coming straight off your bottom line.
Could you be both?
You can do both, and obviously I think you've got to be a larger developer to make that work, and you have to be very, very good at analysing your costs and have a lot of very, very good people about you. We tried doing it in-house, and we did it. We constructed stuff. Was it successful? Not particularly. We're not hands-on enough in terms of the build, and we feel that we can manage the planning side, even though it is risky. We feel it's something we understand and we can manage better than construction issues.
And could we talk about the contract that you would agree with a contractor?
Yep.
What is the typical contract that you agree with?
So you'd go into. We've done various different things. We've done, as I said, when we built ourselves, we'd have some of the labour was in-house. We had carpentry, and I think we had plumbing in-house. But then we'd give packages out for electrics, and we give packages out for demolition and for structure, foundations. That's one way of doing it. You can break it down into packages, and that's probably, if you're good at managing packages and you can understand how to get best price, then you can put it all together. Your problem with that is you've got various different trades coming to site, and they're all supposed to be synced to come in at a certain time. If one lets you down, that will be a domino effect across your build, and someone else will then go, well, I've waited around. I can't do that until he's done that fix, so I'm off. And then you've got a problem. Yeah,
hence the delays start.
Yeah, so I think if you're committed, if you bought a site and you're committed to as a developer and you want to go as a contractor, I would say you do a D&B, design and build. You forward think as much as you can. You've got a good QS and project manager. You get your plans buttoned down. I wouldn't get involved in doing your own engineering. I wouldn't get involved in too much. I would literally say, those are my drawings. Build me that.
Fine.
And that's my spec. Build me that. And that's what gets written to the JCT.
What's the JCT?
It's basically a bill contract.
Oh, fine.
For a fixed price.
Fixed price bill contract. That doesn't mean you can't get variations.
No, you definitely will.
You will get variations because that's,
Nature of the beast.
A lot of builders will tell you it's going to cost one thing because they think that they can see things that you can't see.
Yeah.
And that's going to come and bite you along the line because they're going to make a profit on every pound they spend.
That's why you have a contingency, right?
You do, yeah. And that's why a lot of housing associations, they're very good. They don't like risk at all. So they'll just give a contractor a set of planning drawings and go, that's it. And there's our ERs, there's our spec, build that. And they won't move the spec.
Right.
And then it's very difficult for a contractor to find a variation. And if we were building again, that's how we would do it. And you'd spend a bit more time front end.
Okay. Yeah, because I suppose every variation has a direct impact on your profit at the back end.
But it's expensive, really expensive. Just a project manager on, I think, a 5-house scheme that we did in Enfield. I think the total sale price was £6-7 million. Build cost was £3 million probably, and the project manager alone wanted 75,000. So it's a huge amount of cost.
So break that back. What did you pay for the site, and did you get planning?
Oh, we got planning on it.
Did you buy it subject to and do the planning in between, or you bought?
No, we bought. So it's a terrible example of how not to do business. But we bought the site on the basis that we thought we could get 7 houses with a pre-application from Enfield Council. We had 9 months to complete. Enfield were a disaster. We ended up completing. We ended up getting refused for 7. We applied for 7 and 6, got refused for 7 and 6, and ended up with 5 houses. By which time we'd had to complete, and we were well up against it, and we had to build our way out of it, which is what we did.
Okay.
And it was a tough site, and they looked lovely, and we got 5 people living in our houses, and we're out. Yeah.
what does flipping a house mean?
It means where you are buying a property which you've exchanged upon, and you try and flip your contract before you have to complete, which means that you're passing all your stamp duty costs up to the next buyer. So you don't have to pay stamp duty. So sometimes you could find a property where maybe there's a profit in between, but because you don't have to pay the stamp duty, it makes it more beneficial to sell it.
You're
signing the
contract over to another buyer before you have to complete.
Yeah.
So it's step by step. I find a property I want to buy, and I would buy it, exchange, but I haven't bought it.
No,
you've exchanged.
I've exchanged.
Yeah.
So then
between exchange and completion, you'll find a buyer.
Yeah.
And that buyer will then take your contract.
So would I do any work to the house in between? How do I add value to that?
You might do. Well, you might have bought it under market value.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So the idea is you bought very well, and someone's prepared to pay full market value for it, and you sign that contract between exchange and completion, and you've pretty much taken no liability, and you've made a profit in between.
Where does one go to find a house that I can flip?
That is the art. That is the art of real estate.
It's not an easy thing to do. It's not. We've done it. We've done it a few times.
Post crash, it was very popular, right? So post 2008.
I mean, right now, I would expect that they're out there. I mean, well, depends what it is. I mean, I think the residential market's pretty hot, but I think we've found lately that a lot of people have been putting off things. Certainly old commercial buildings which have just been sitting on. They've had Brexit, they've waited, and now they've had COVID, they've had lockdown.
They've had enough.
And they're like, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
Let's just get on with it. And I think we've seen a lot of that.
I agree.
Yeah. Cool. But residential flipping properties is much more difficult nowadays because stamp duty is it's a lot more expensive than it was. Even though you're not paying it, you have to buy it significantly undervalued. Someone somewhere along the line is going to pay the stamp duty, so you've got to buy it significantly under market. I also feel
with technology, people are so much more aware of what their property is actually worth. People aren't, with the internet as well, Rightmove and everything, and all the other tools gadgets we've got to work out what are actually properties worth. It's probably a lot harder unless someone's in a really distressed situation, which is what some people are looking for, to find that person who needs to move quickly. As you said, it's much harder than it ever was.
No, I won't be.
You're still on the hunt, aren't you, Katrina?
Flipping houses.
She's like, straight out of here, you're on the hunt.
Google.
There'll be something somewhere. It's just got to be lucky to fall into it, really.
I'll stick with marketing, I think.
Okay.
Great. That kind of concludes our 5 questions, but we've got a few little questions we want to ask you directly. And using kind of your experience as a property developer and your career, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received would be to not put off tomorrow what you can do today. That's not right.
I'm going to go flip a house now.
You can cut that because I do know it. Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. There you go. Okay. Can we cut that now? That was horrific.
Yeah, but I think it was good.
It was good.
I quite lied to you because it was real.
Fine, I could get it now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually Benjamin Franklin, and my boss taught me that in my first job.
I like
Funny
that.
what sticks with you.
Yeah.
Nick, what's your best advice? May as well ask you while you're here.
Received. Also, my first job was always be professional and never bullshit.
Is it working?
I'm full of shit. I've got no professionalism whatsoever.
No, exactly.
Bridging. No, I'm joking.
That's why you're in the property
No. Do you know
industry.
what it is? It was good advice because everyone can smell bullshit. Everyone can smell a liar, and as long as you do keep things pretty straight, pretty professional, you can't really go wrong. So I've tried to do that. I'm not, no one's perfect, but I've tried to.
Cool. And maybe you will give your younger self the same advice you received, but what advice would you have given your younger self?
I would give my younger self, don't chase every deal. That, I had a tendency to, if I sniffed anything, I'd spend hours and hours and hours and try and uncover it. And sometimes you're just trying to push water uphill. And it goes back to the key point I said before. If it's not deliverable, don't bother. It's just not worth it. So I think I've saved certainly over the last 5 to 6 to 7 years, rather than chasing everything down. If I know I can deliver it, I'll spend time and money on it. If not, I won't bother.
Cool. And what changes would you like to see in the property development industry?
I would like to see land registry tighten up their rules in terms of and their processes to stop fraud, because I think it's horrific the way they operate. I just don't understand how you can have your highest value asset and somebody can walk in and buy it off the street if they're clever enough, and it's not that difficult to do. And it's happened to us where we've had fraudulent issues that shouldn't be happening but do. And the planning system probably needs a bit of an overhaul. In fact, does need an overhaul.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah, well,
you never talk about this on LinkedIn.
No, we don't. But planning, you've got an employed planning department and professional officers who have been trained in planning and understand policy, but they're allowing themselves to being dictated to by the local councillors, who are not saying they're all untrained, but they're not trained planning professionals, and they are swayed by local community. Now, I appreciate there has to be some local community dialogue when you're trying to put up a building, but there are too many cases where there is no need to engage with the local community, where you've got buildings that really are not particularly relevant. They're not going to make a massive difference to people. They're answering problems in terms of housing, and it ends up going to committee. You've got maybe you've got a recommendation for approval. It gets refused. You're then stuck in the appeal system. You're 2 years down the line for something that shouldn't take more than 6 months. Or you've got situations where the planning officers are too scared to make a positive decision because it's too political. And I just think politics and planning need to be separated to a degree. And that would definitely free up land and make stuff come forward quicker.
Yeah, you talk about the community. Look at all the sill payment scandal that's going on at the moment as well. We could get into a whole other conversation about that.
Yeah,
Whole probably in itself.
It probably is, to be fair.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
It's been really interesting and certainly answered some of my questions anyway. So
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for coming out.
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed
Thanks
that.
for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I find it really informative.
thanks everyone for listening and watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch. Like, comment and subscribe. See you next time. Thanks.